All right, file this one away as one of those videos that cause you to lose a little hope in humanity. Here's the video. It's put out by a Facebook page called Too Cool, and you know it's legit because they spell cool with a K. So watching the video, you're seeing these clips from popular movies and stock images of attractive women, promises of free beer, and $5,000 a month just to marry an Icelandic woman. And watching, I'm actually wondering if this is some sort of a joke video and I'm just not in on the joke, but it had been seen more than 3 million times in the first 24 hours alone. And a disturbingly high amount of commenters on the video seem to be taking it at face value. So let me make this very clear. This is false. Like really, false. Apparently this is a recycled hoax from the last couple years, which made my verified job easier. Online fact checker Snopes already did a lot of the legwork, and I also turned to the government of Iceland's immigration website. Turns out the entire premise is false. Rather than having too many women and not enough men in Iceland, men actually slightly outnumber women. And instead of offering newcomers money, the Directorate of Immigration's website says you have to prove your own financial support before you're granted a residence permit. So gentlemen, before you pack your bags and move to Iceland, make sure you got the cash and you're prepared to find yourself a wife. So update, it's now up to 11 million views. We were talking off camera about how there's just these videos that just will go viral. Like you mentioned the resurrection of Friends, and there's going to be a sequel and all that kind of stuff. And they're not always even edited that well, but they'll get traction. And then I think it's one of those success breeds success things where because it's being shared so much and people are talking about it, people just sort of assume it's true.
And Rob mentioned Iceland now has to like unplug their phone because there are so many phone calls.
According to Snopes, the embassy in Egypt had to like send out a message saying, no, we are not inviting you to come and pay you to marry our women. Yeah. Because they're getting so many men who are interested in this. So I don't know, we need to have a class in school of like, here's how to determine that a video on Facebook is not real.
With the facepalm emoji behind it.
I had to edit this because this was my reaction.
Be smarter than the internet, people.
I've had enough internet for today. It's 6:19 a.m.
Okay, you get a break. We'll give you a break from me.
So, is smoking in a car with a kid illegal across the United States? Nope. Remember how I mentioned that the article cites another article from Yahoo Lifestyle? Like it even takes direct quotes from it? Well, if you click on over, you'll see that it's actually referring to a specific bill passed by the House of Representatives in Alabama. Turns out, while there are city and state bans on smoking in cars with kids, there's no national ban on the subject. And Washington and Idaho are not among the states that have adopted bans like this. The Spokane Regional Health District tells me it hasn't initiated anything in this regard, but there have been bills in front of the Washington State Legislature in the past. It's a very common concern that as kids come out to trick or treat, child predators will come out too and prey on those children. It's actually such a common concern that some states have adopted laws regarding sex offenders and where they're allowed to be and what they're allowed to do on Halloween. But do the statistics bear out this increased worry? Here's what I learned. To verify, I turned to the Spokane Police Department and research featured by the National Institutes of Health, which was compiled by scholars from across the U.S., looking at data on sexual abuse. And right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that this urban legend of increased risk is false. The compiled data on the subject shows no evidence to suggest any sort of an increase caused by Halloween or trick-or-treating. And the Spokane Police Department told me this matches what they see in our area too. Still, we want to be clear that just because there isn't an increased risk overall doesn't mean you shouldn't teach your kids to stay safe, regardless of the time of year.
You know, I just think it's an open, honest conversation you have with your children. Don't put fear into them, but just let them know it's not a good idea to go in anybody's house unsupervised from their parent. Kids are a parent's precious commodity, and on Halloween, it's a different atmosphere. You've got the costumes, it's night, it's just spookiness around the holiday. So I think it makes them more on edge.
The Spokane Police Department had another message of safety that they wanted to drive home too, and that's with walking in safety. Your kid's actually in much more danger of getting hit by a car than they are to fall victim to a child predator on Halloween, and so that's why the police department recommends that you go trick-or-treating with your kid. The first ad targets Idaho gubernatorial candidates Brad Little and Raul Labrador. It's paid for by the Idaho First PAC, so to verify, I turned to articles cited in the ad from the Spokesman Review, the Idaho Statesman, and the Idaho Falls Post-Register, plus an interview with Boise State Public Radio. First thing to point out, none of these articles are very recent. Take a look. April of 2003, May of 2004. The most recent article the ad cites is from 2015. Now, the fact that the citations are dated doesn't necessarily make the claims true or false, but it is important to keep in mind as you watch.
Little has repeatedly supported higher taxes, higher sales tax, higher gas tax, even an internet sales tax.
These claims are true, kind of. A little more context is helpful here. It is true that he introduced and voted for a tax on internet sales back in 2007, and he chaired a task force in 2010 that called for a higher gas tax, arguing Idaho roads needed the funds. But the Spokesman Review article cited by the ad notes that the task force didn't announce any specific increases or even a timeline for them. And again, it's important to remember that the articles cited here range from 2003 to 2010.
Labrador even voted no on millions for Idaho schools and roads.
Again, needs more context. Labrador did vote against a bill that included funding for rural schools in Idaho, but it was added as part of a larger Medicare bill that he didn't support. Labrador said in an interview with Boise State Public Radio at the time that he would have supported the funds as a standalone bill.
If it wouldn't have passed, it would have passed as a standalone bill. There was never any danger of this legislation not passing.
The full moon connection. You'll hear story after story, but is there more than anecdotal evidence for this? Well, to verify, I turned to the Farmer's Almanac for the full moon calendar, the Spokane County 911 call center, the Spokane Police Department, and a professor of neuroscience at the University of Washington. First, let's take a look specifically at our area. I used the Farmer's Almanac to find the dates of 4 full moons in the 2016 calendar year. I picked February 22nd, April 21st, August 18th, and December 13th, so I had a good spread of different times of the year. I then sent these dates to the Spokane County 911 call center to see if they saw a spike in calls. Compared to the same day 2 weeks later, 3 of the 4 saw higher call numbers, by an average of 116. But the last full moon date actually had 276 fewer calls than the same day 2 weeks later. Interesting to look at, but by no means a scientific study. So I turned to Dr. Eric Chudler, a neuroscientist at the University of Washington. Lucky for me, he's already done a lot of the legwork, compiling dozens of studies on the full moon and its impact on human behavior.
The overwhelming evidence suggests that there is no relationship to any of those abnormal behaviors and the phase of the moon. When these things happen and you just happen to notice that the moon is out at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, you notice it and you assign blame to it. But the same things happen at other times of the month and you just don't notice it, so you don't assign blame to any other particular time.
Still, I knew that this superstition is common among law enforcement and first responders. So I asked Spokane Police if they're aware of the full moon superstitions and if it impacted their operations.
You know, I've heard it. I can tell you that we don't necessarily adjust staffing levels based on lunar cycles. There's no predictability to it. And so I think that's one of the challenges of being a police officer is you can't really let down and bank on wives' tales. You kind of just have to be ready for whatever.
Probably a good call, because even though there may be a few studies that seem to show links, the complete body of research shows otherwise. So we're calling this claim false. Well, even if the full moon connection is only anecdotal, they are widely shared anecdotes throughout different cultures and throughout history. In fact, just look at the word lunacy, which we use to say crazy or sporadic insanity. The root word, luna, is Latin for moon. So there you go.